Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. John Hancock is a drunk. He lives his life on the streets and is practically always drunk. He was sleeping on a bench when a boy wakes him up and points to the TV, where a police chase is being broadcast. Despite his typical drunk appearance, he has superhuman powers. He understands what the boy wants, so suddenly, after grabbing his liquor bottle, he flies off with such force that he can destroy the bench he was on. Due to his constant drunkenness and irresponsible behavior, he inadvertently causes millions of dollars in property damage. First, the sidewalk and the bench he was on, then a road sign and some police cars. Finally, after getting into the criminal's car and, after losing his liquor bottle with a shot from them, he gets furious and destroys the highway by stopping the car with his feet. He then flies away, carrying them with the car and everything. He later impales the car on a tower. As a result, he is routinely ridiculed by the public and considered a nuisance by the police. Then, we meet Ray Embry, a public relations spokesperson promoting companies that want to be seen as charitable. He leaves an unsuccessful meeting and, distracted while talking on the phone, gets stuck on a railroad track with a car in front of him and another behind, preventing him from getting out. However, he takes a while to notice that a train is approaching, and when he finally sees it, he tries to get away with the car but ends up just hitting the cars in front and behind him. He then tries to get out, but his seatbelt gets stuck, and he ends up foolishly resigning himself to death. That's when Hancock appears and saves Ray's life. Hancock effortlessly lifts the car and moves it away from the train's path, and then abruptly stops the train, causing the front cars to derail. This incident causes millions of dollars in damages once again. Hancock is criticized by everyone who questions why he didn't simply grab his car and fly straight up. Ray, however, intervenes and thanks Hancock for saving his life. Hancock then takes Ray and his car to his house, where he meets Ray's family, his wife Mary, a beautiful woman who seems very familiar to Hancock, and his son Aaron. Ray invites Hancock inside, and they all have a meal of spaghetti and meatballs. Interestingly, Mary looks at Hancock reluctantly throughout the meal. Later, as Hancock is about to leave, Ray offers to help improve Hancock's public image, but Hancock is reluctant to accept. Ray insists and gives him his business card, suggesting that he think about it. Later, in the couple's bedroom, Mary speaks ill of Hancock, but Ray defends him and is confused about why she hates him so much when all he wants is respect from people, and Ray wants to help him get that. Meanwhile, Hancock is listening to their conversation from the rooftop and must feel that Ray can understand him. The next day, after thinking it over, Hancock decides to give Ray's proposal a chance. He flies to Ray's house and, as usual, crashes through the floor upon landing. One of the kids calls him a jerk, and he decides to confront the boy, immediately asking for the boy's name. The boy, speaking with a heavy French accent, keeps calling Hancock a jerk, even when he asks him not to and tells him to stop bothering Ray's son. However, the crazy boy continues to taunt him, so Hancock decides to scare him by launching him high into the air. Hancock's action frightens the other kids, and Ray comes outside, happy that Hancock decided to come and trust him. Hancock then retrieves the boy and releases him so he can go see his dad. This, along with the issue of him always causing destruction, is what Ray will be working on with Hancock. Ray then shows him some videos of himself on the internet, where, despite trying to help people, he acts in a completely foolish manner, drawing negative attention from everyone. After extinguishing an apartment fire, Hancock lands to buy ice cream but is nearly naked in front of the children. When a giant beached whale is stranded, Hancock comes and launches it with great force, hitting a boat in the middle of the ocean. Ray's point about this is that Hancock is foolish in his actions. Ray understands that Hancock is lonely and wants people to accept him. While Ray tries to stop him from drinking, Mary arrives and turns on the TV news, where the reporter mentions that there are several arrest warrants for Hancock, and he didn't appear in court. For some reason, Mary seems satisfied to hear this. After hearing this news, Ray has a great idea, which involves Hancock surrendering to the authorities and transforming himself in prison to show Los Angeles how much the city really needs him. He says that in 2 weeks, people will be begging for him to be back on the streets. In the worst-case scenario, if it doesn't work, he can just fly out of jail. Hancock doesn't seem to like the idea very much, but agrees to it. We soon see him making a public speech. Some reporters reprimand him, but he follows Ray's script and says that he will attend anger management therapy and promises to get better. Mary watches the news and feels guilty. In the penitentiary, he walks with other inmates for registration. He gets fingerprinted and has his photo taken. On the way to his cell, some criminals who bear a grudge against him confront him to show their dominance. Most of the inmates are there because of Hancock, but he doesn't want trouble. But seeing that the guys won't cooperate, he threatens to do something unpleasant to one guy if they don't move out of his way. Everyone laughs, but Hancock follows through on his threat, and the guy's head ends up where Hancock said it would. Now, nobody will dare mess with him after that. Ray doesn't find the story amusing, so he tells Hancock that the prosecution wants him to serve 8 years in prison or 4.5 years for good behavior. Hancock, surprised by this, strongly disagrees and starts to move to leave, but Ray stops him, calling him a coward. Ray tells Hancock to stop pretending not to care, to stay and wait, that their plan will work, and he's sure that the people will need him. Hancock reluctantly agrees to stay. Ray meets with him every day and tells him to control his flight, how he lands, and how he takes off. Ray also teaches him how to shake hands and advises on manners and giving compliments. During his time in prison, Hancock mostly plays basketball and attends anger management meetings, where he usually just lets others speak. Days later, it's reported in the news that crime has risen significantly following Hancock's imprisonment. The next day, Mary and her son Aaron visit Hancock. She brings him meatballs with spaghetti, and he enjoys it. During their brief conversation, Mary tells him that Ray is a good man and asks him not to disappoint him. On another day, Ray brings him a suit to wear when they call him for assistance. Hancock hesitates, but Ray convinces him that it's a uniform to represent himself. Another day, while playing basketball and missing the ball, it flies out of the prison. Hancock jumps to retrieve it outside, and the guards interpret it as an escape attempt. Hancock could have been free at that moment if he had wanted to, but he decides to return to prison because he was genuinely trying to change. During an anger management meeting, he finally opens up, saying only his name and that he used to drink. People praise him for this, and he starts to feel somewhat accepted. Later, Hancock is contacted by the police chief to help the police prevent a brutal bank heist. He prepares for the anticipated day, shaving and putting on his special suit. The heist leads to a shootout between the police and the robbers, with bombs tied to the hostages. Hancock is released from prison and makes a triumphant return, this time landing without destroying anything, surprising even the task force. The officer gives him the case details: 8 hostages, 4 criminals, and an officer shot in the crossfire. Hancock then tells the officer she's doing a good job and enters. He enters the crossfire and, as expected, is unharmed by bullets and grenades. He then reaches the wounded officer and politely asks for permission to touch her, picking her up and getting her to safety, trying to be a true gentleman. He uses the car as a shield to move her to safety. Determined to finish things quickly, Hancock starts circling the building and pulls out the criminals one by one. The last robber threatens to blow everyone up if Hancock doesn't open the safe and give him all the money, then take him away from there. When the thief insults him by calling him a fool, it sparks his anger. He unscrews the light bulb, flattens it, and sharpens it. Then he asks the thief to call him a fool one more time. The guy is about to say something when boom, the arm with the detonator is gone. With the case successfully concluded, Hancock hands the handcuffed criminal's arm with the detonator to the police officer, and people thank him for a job well done. Ray is proud and very pleased with this. In no time, Hancock is suddenly admired by the people. Everyone wants a photo and a handshake from him. One day, he, along with Ray and Mary, is invited to a thank you dinner. There, he opens up a bit about himself to Ray and Mary, saying that he is immortal because the last thing he remembers is 80 years ago when he woke up in a hospital after a head injury. He quickly recovered, but what saddens him is that he's never been sought after by anyone. This leads to Mary crying, and trying to contain her tears, she apologizes to Hancock, but he doesn't understand why she is apologizing, as he believes she did nothing wrong. Later, at home, Hancock puts Ray to bed because he's totally drunk. Before leaving, Ray grabs his hand and tells him he will be fine, that he will fix everything. He then goes downstairs and sees Mary doing the dishes. She tries to say goodbye to him, but the conversation doesn't end, and something draws them closer to each other. Mary notices Hancock's injured hand, which shouldn't be possible. Hancock says he doesn't know how it happened and mentions feeling strange. Something more intimate happens between them, and after a kiss, Hancock is shocked to discover that Mary isn't an ordinary woman. She tosses him out of her house with tremendous force, destroying part of the kitchen wall. Thrown outside onto a car, Mary approaches him, flying, and threatens him, saying she'll kill him if Ray finds out about it, leaving Hancock very surprised to learn that Mary has those superhuman powers. In the morning, Ray is hungover and notices the damage to the house. Mary blames Hancock, saying he sneezed and caused it. She does everything in her power to portray herself as a helpless and fragile wife. Hancock arrives, and when Ray receives a call, he tries to make sure that what he witnessed yesterday is true. He attempts to stab Mary with a fork, but it only bends. Then he hits her with a rolling pin, but it shatters into 1,000 pieces, and she feels nothing. He threatens to expose her unless she explains what was going on, and they arrange to meet. Later, Mary goes to Hancock's place, looking like a different person. She tells him that they've been living with their powers for 3,000 years, and in the past, they were called by various names, gods, angels, and now the trendy term is superheroes. She also explains that they are the last of their kind since all the others have died, leaving only the two of them. The temperature in the room starts to rise dramatically, with even the popcorn popping. Hancock grabs her hand and asks her what they are to each other. Mary says they are siblings and starts to leave, but Hancock refuses to believe it because the atmosphere they had yesterday didn't feel like siblings. He tells her he'll tell Ray everything. He takes off flying, with Mary right behind him to stop him. This leads to a fight, and they end up in the city center, causing significant destruction in the area. Then she tells him that she has put up with him for the last 3,000 years, but Hancock doesn't remember her and calls her crazy because she wasn't listening. When she stops and asks him to call her crazy just one more time, which he promptly does, the weather begins to change. Then she grabs a truck and hurls it at him with all her strength. Meanwhile, Ray, who is at a business meeting, is once again trying to promote his work. Back to the superhuman standoff, the weather becomes highly destructive where they are, with even tornadoes forming around Hancock. The two of them then collide and destroy everything in their path. When Ray and the others see that the weather outside is strange, it's suddenly Hancock and Mary who crash through the facade of the building they're in. Ray can't help but be stunned by the scene. While Hancock is holding Mary, he apologizes to her for anything he might have done to her in the past that he doesn't remember, and says she's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen in his life. Ray, witnessing all of this, can't believe it, and both realize they've been seen by him. Later, Hancock finds Ray and Mary at their home. Mary explains that Hancock is technically her husband, but they separated decades ago, long before Ray was born. She explains that they were made in pairs, and she and Hancock are the only ones left because the others joined together and died as a result. They are always drawn to each other, even though she tries to run from it. Ray asks what will happen now with this dramatic revelation, but Mary says she doesn't know and leaves the two of them. In the evening, Hancock goes to the liquor store because he wants to hide from his feelings behind alcohol. Then he sees on the TV news that the bank robber, for whom he once cut off his hand to save everyone from an explosion, escaped from prison with some friends. While he is buying his bottles, which are absurdly expensive according to Hancock, costing $91.10, the store owner covers the zero to signal a request for help. Hancock understands and intervenes in the robbery. However, one of the criminals, before being thrown away, shoots Hancock, which isn't significant unless it affects him, which it does because he starts to feel pain and bleed from the gunshot wound. He is immediately taken to the hospital. When Mary visits him, she explains that when two immortals get physically close, they start losing their powers. Meanwhile, Ray is in the hospital elevator with his son, going to visit Hancock as well. The bank robber who escaped prison is there too, and he certainly isn't up to anything good. As Mary describes how she and Hancock were attacked many times in the past while vulnerable as humans when they decided to live together as a couple, she explains that he always defended her but was seriously injured, so they would separate for a while until their powers returned and they became strong again. She goes on to describe how he got each scar he has, with the most recent one being 80 years ago in an alley in Miami. During a robbery, Hancock was beaten badly by the criminals, and his skull was fractured, resulting in amnesia. To save his life, Mary left him at the hospital at that time so he could recover from his injuries. After her explanation, the hospital is invaded by the escaped bank robbers and several other criminals Hancock encountered during his time in prison. Mary is shot while trying to defend Hancock, who uses his remaining power to stop two of them with his hospital bed. After putting Mary on a bed, he throws one of the invaders out of the window and is further injured while dealing with the others. Ray and his son just watch, unable to do anything. Hancock gradually gets weaker and is stabbed in the back with a knife, while Mary, who is being treated, feels the same pain. He is hit by a gas cylinder and then thrown away by the explosion caused by the criminal, who then begins to strangle him. To avoid dying in that way, Hancock uses a low blow and then throws the criminal out of the window. Meanwhile, Mary appears to have not been able to withstand the ordeal and suffers a cardiac arrest. Hancock is then confronted by the leader of the criminals and is shot multiple times. On the ground and without any strength left, Hancock is about to be finished when Ray arrives and saves him at the last moment. In order to prevent his partner from dying, Hancock gets up with the last bit of strength he has and jumps out of the hospital, trying to get as far away as possible while regaining his powers. Eventually, he can fly again and goes far away. Thanks to this, Mary can be revived by the doctors and wakes up. A month later, Mary is seen with Ray and Aaron again, telling him about all the different historical figures' personalities she's had over the years. Hancock calls Ray, who now lives in New York and works as a superhero. He asks Ray to look up, and when he does, he sees that the moon is painted with the logo of the cause Ray advocates to change the world. Hancock did this as a thank you for helping him change. He then continues his journey of saving people around the world.